Turn to the book of Exodus, Exodus chapter 18. It's just like His great love. And we do serve a great God who loves us with all of His heart. And His love is our sufficiency. Again, I want to thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for the privilege of being able to come and share God's Word with you tonight. Just a couple of things to remind you about on the table in the lobby. We do have a series of messages on how to parent adult children. So there's 6 messages in this particular one. And so, if you, again, anybody, if you can use this, take it. If you want to put something in the love offering for it, that's great, and help with the expense of it. But getting that out to people is very important to us to try to help them. Also, we have in the lobby, I think we have a few more of these, the brochures about the Harbor Ministry. It's a counseling ministry we have for couples who are going through difficult times, both those in ministry and those lay couples. So if you have, you can go on our website, stillwatersbaptist.org, and get information about that also, and download the brochure. If you know of anybody that's struggling and we can help them, we'd be more than glad to do it if the Lord were to make that possible. Tonight, we're going to be talking about parenting adult children and other adults. We come in as far as influencing them. But I want to let you know about tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, we're going to finish up with this message, Lord willing, how to sensibly respond to stubborn people. How to sensibly, if I can pronounce it, respond to stubborn people. Now, do you know anybody that is stubborn? Are you a carrier? And yourself. Anyhow, we're going to talk about that tomorrow night. How do you handle stubborn people biblically, sensibly, scripturally? That'll be tomorrow night. But tonight, how to influence your adult child, and then subtitle, along with the other adults or teens in your life. And you see the little cartoon there, which says, I don't care what he says, child labor laws were never intended to protect the right of children in their mid-30s. And that certainly is true. There is a time to get up and to get with the program. I want to give you a couple of terms to think about tonight, okay? Have you ever heard these terms before? They all have something in common. Okay, I'm going to give you 4 phrases. First of all, 4 titles, 4 words, sets of words. First of all, show business. You ever heard the term show business? Have you ever heard the term professional football? Or the term public service? Or the phrase adult children? All 4 of those phrases have something in common. Show business, professional football, public service, adult children. What they have in common is this. In each of them, both words contribute a dynamic that is significant, to which the other word is dependent upon to fully understand what you're talking about. For example, if you're in show business, you have to make sure, now watch this, not only do you worry about the show, but the business part of it. Now I realize we went to Sight and Sound on Wednesday. Wonderful ministry, wonderful program, but I'm assuming they got to balance the books. At some point, 1 + 1 = 2. So they've got to figure out not just the show, the presentation part, but the business part, don't they? That's why you can't say, y'all just come on in, that's fine. You want some Coke? Here's some free Coke. And some, because it's all got to be, the business part of it has to balance out, okay? Professional football. These guys aren't just a bunch of guys playing football in the back. They're professional. Both those words go together. Well, adult child is the same thing. You have to understand that if you have an adult child, that entity is both an adult, but you're always going to be mom and dad. So they're still your children. Now, the problem you got to watch out for is this. I brought here some instant snow. Okay, this will give you instant snow. And now, do y'all get snow up here? Y'all get snow, don't you? I would imagine you do. We get snow at the beach occasion, not very much. But here it is a 3-step mechanism to make snow. Now, I can guarantee you, I'm not sure what this actually makes, but I can tell you what, any similarity between what this can makes and what you find outside your house in the wintertime is strictly accidental. It is not the same thing. It is different. It may be white, it may be cold, whatever, but it is not the same thing at all. Okay? Now watch this, okay? When a child becomes an adult, you can't treat them like a child, but at the same time, you must acknowledge that they are your child. Now here's the challenge that parents face, okay? And here's how it works, okay? And Seth, how old are you? You're 7 years old. Wow. And brother, may I ask how old you are? 35. He is so old. He is 35 years old. Now watch this, okay? Now, I'm old enough to be this man's daddy. I'm not his daddy, but I could be his daddy, okay? Now, here's the thing, all right? If I was his daddy, okay, I could see him at 35. How old are you? But I could also see behind him a 7-year-old. You ever seen a TV show or a movie where you have this camera and the camera does something magical and the person closest to you is in clear view, and then they do something else with the camera and the person way in the background is in clear view? You know what I'm talking about? And the person up front is foggy, okay? See, when you have an adult child, like I have two of them, and I can see them. I can see that 34-year-old that is a missionary and he's taking care of things, he's mature and so forth. But I can see the 13-year-old that couldn't find his way out of his bedroom. It was so dirty. One time I went into his bedroom and there was stuff everywhere. I said, son, this is a mess and you got to clean it up. And he looks at me and says, Dad, what's the problem? He says, I can wake up in the morning and with one glance see everything I have. What's the problem? Okay? Let me tell you something. His wife don't let him do that now. I can tell you right now. But I can see the kid that couldn't figure out anything. And now this kid's got 3 kids halfway around the world. Now here's the danger and the problem with we who have adult children. We have to make sure that while we cannot forget all those kids in the background, that we keep our eye on the one that's here. He's not 15 anymore. And he doesn't want to be treated like a 15-year-old. Okay? Now, with that said, I want to give you a story, tell you a story that's played out almost every year in families with adult children. It goes something like this. It's November. Junior calls home, and the phone rings. Ring, 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 and the guy picks it up. And so Dad answers it. Hello. Hey, Dad, it's Junior. All right. Hey, how you doing? Here's your mom. Do I have a witness? Okay. Hey, how you doing, Dad? Fine. Here's your mom. Okay. Then the mom, let me talk to Dad. Okay, fine. Okay. Yeah. What you want, son? Dad, next month it's December, and this year, for the first time, Christmas comes in December, December 25th. And in fact, now, Dad, I want to ask you a question. What do you want for Christmas? Now, somebody tell me what Dad's going to say. Come on, you can say, you know, what is it? Nothing. I don't need nothing, son. No, Dad, come on. What do you want for Christmas? And what's Dad going to say? Nothing. Now, the reason why Dad's saying nothing, now listen to me, I'm going to help you. Now, this is going to be worth coming for tonight. I guarantee you, that preacher that lied to you on Monday, who told you to let you out at 8 o'clock every night, who lied to you last night, he won't lie to you tonight. I know I lied to you last night. I didn't mean to. We went past 8 o'clock. But we will be done at 8 o'clock tonight, Lord willing, okay? And I think he is willing, okay? I've been told he was willing by my wife. And no, I'm just kidding. Okay, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding about that part, but we will be done. All right, but now here's the deal, okay? That fellow, that dad who says nothing didn't hear the question. The reason why he said nothing was he didn't hear the question. You see, what he heard was this. He heard the 7-year-old saying to him, Dad, what do you need? What can I give you that you can't provide for yourself? And no dad's going to say, I don't need my son. I'm supposed to provide for you. See, he heard his son say, what do you need? But really what his son was saying was this. Now get this. This is worth coming for. He says, Dad, I want to show you I love you. Can you please give me an idea of how I can express my love to you? That's what he was saying. He wasn't saying, hey, Dad, is your power getting ready to be cut off? Do you need some money? Dad, you need some groceries? Dad, is there a thing at Home Depot you can't afford? He wasn't saying that. Do you understand what I'm saying? He was just saying, Dad, and here's what happens, because it happened to me. When you're 25 and you call and you hear nothing. When you're 28 and you call and you hear nothing. At 30 you call and you hear nothing. You begin to think, you know what, it doesn't really matter to Dad that I share with him and show him that I love him. Because every time I ask Dad how I can do it, he tells me it's not important. You see, that just illustrates, they had men from Mars and women from Venus or whatever. But let me tell you something. Adult children are from a galaxy far, far away. And dad and moms are in this galaxy. It's just two different worlds. Okay? And you have to understand that difference and respond to it. Now, that's why I'm a firm believer. And by the way, if you have children that are not adult, but they're young, and particularly, but I would encourage you, I believe when come Christmas time or Father's Day or whatever, because Father's Day is in June, I believe, and I use the tier system. The tier system. Is that what I'm saying? Tier, right? The tier system, okay? The low tier is stuff, okay, well, I really want, like, there's this really nice shirt at Walmart. Okay, I like to have a Walmart shirt, okay? Whatever, okay? And then there's some tools at Home Depot, okay, I could really use, okay? Now, there is this table saw that's only $300, okay? But I tier them. And now listen, if you learn to do this, it can work. It can work. I've got an iPad out of this. I got a widescreen and a big screen TV here a couple of years ago. They all went together. So hey, this system can work if you work it right. Now, when the kids were younger adults, I got the shirt from Walmart. Now, one of them started a business this year, so I might get another shirt from Walmart this year because, he's starting his own business. But that's okay. But by giving them a tier, I don't say, okay, well, if you like me a lot, it's this. If you love me, it's this. If you really love me, it's this. I don't say that, but I give them I shoot for three different price ranges. Why is that? My dad has been gone for 10 years, and I would give anything to be able to buy him something. The time's going to come when they're going to want to show me they love me, and I'm going to be gone. So until then, I want to use it. Now, the point is, but the point is, it's good for them. It's good for them. When your wife tells you, your husband, or your kids ask you, what do you want? Don't say nothing, okay? Now, I'm going to get off that hobby horse, okay? But I need to give that to you, okay? Now, let's go to Exodus chapter 18, okay? Now, here's the deal, okay? Moses is getting the free coffee from McDonald's. I mean, the man is over 80. He goes to McDonald's. They give him a free coffee. His father-in-law, Jethro, he gets like a free Big Mac. I mean, he gets everything free because if Moses gets the discount coffee, Moses gets the discount, Jethro must get the free coffee because he's older. He's his father-in-law. Okay? So this is an old guy visiting an old guy. Okay, you say, why are you saying I'm 85 years and I'm old? Well, just do the math. But I'm just telling you, okay, you're not midlife. You're a little optimistic if you think you're at midlife at 85, okay? It's not the way life is, okay? So this guy here is he's in his 80s, he's over 80, and he's 85 years old. And Jethro comes. And what you have here is, it would seem what happened biblically is that Jethro's children and wife went to her parents' house, where Moses went and delivered Israel out of Egypt. Well, now Jethro is going to come back. He's going to bring the kids with him back to dad, okay, kind of thing. And that's the first 4 verses of Exodus chapter 18. Now, in chapter 18, verse 5, to the end, you have an interaction between Moses and Jethro, whereby, this is what happens, okay? Jethro influences Moses in a way that when it's all over, they're both talking to each other, and they're both able to move forward in their relationship. Now, I want to challenge you to, this is very important, okay? Now, when one of our sons called me one time and said, Dad, I am, going to buy a car. I'm going to buy a car. He was 20-something years old. I said, well, son, let me ask you a question. Do you want me to be excited for you, or do you want my advice? I'll do either one. I'm not buying it. I'm not making the payments. I'm not going to make the repairs. I don't really care. I mean, if you buy it, you buy it. You don't, you don't. Do you want my advice, or do you want me to be excited for you? He said, I want your advice. So I gave him advice. A few days later, he calls me up again. He says, Dad, I'm going to buy this car. It was the same car. I said, well, let me ask you a question. Do you want my advice, or do you want me to be excited for you? He said, I want some more advice. I gave him advice. A few days later, he calls back. He says, Dad, I'm going to buy this car. It was the same car each time, I think it was. But he called me to buy this car. So obviously, he wasn't listening to me. Okay? So then I said, well, you want me to be excited for you? Or you want me to give you advice? He said, I want you to be excited for me. I said, I'm excited. Great. Great choice. Now, wait a minute, preacher. How can you tell him it's a great choice after you gave him advice and he bought it anyhow? Because it's not my decision. I'm not making the payment. And this might surprise you. I could have been wrong. It might have been the right car to buy. But the fact was, I had to use the opportunity I had to influence him and then know, to quote an old Christian song, I had to know when to hold him, when to fold him, when to walk away, when to run. I had to know when to keep my mouth shut. Okay? Now I want to help you tonight to do that so you can influence people, and when you get done, you can still have Christmas dinner and everybody's happy with each other. Okay? All right, now with that said, let me give them, there are 10 points, to be pretty quick, okay, but I'll give them to you and I think you'll be able to understand them, okay? First of all, look at chapter 18, look at verse 5. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife unto Moses into the wilderness where he encamped about the mount of God. And he said unto Moses, I, thy father-in-law Jethro, have come unto thee, and thy wife, and her two sons with her, okay? Point number one, okay? You've got to invest the energy to be in their presence. You have to invest the energy to be in their presence. In other words, now watch this appearance of adult children. You can't sit at home by the phone and say, well, you know what? It's their job to call me. You can't stay at home and say, it's their job to come visit me. There's a Greek word for that. It's called loneliness. Now, this may surprise you, but if you pick up your phone or turn your phone on, it works both ways. It may shock you, but the same road that leads from their house to your house, this is going to shock you, leads from your house to their house. You see, there are a lot of parents who miss the joy of influencing their adult children because they're just a pain about it. It's always up to their adult children to make it the extension to come this way. They never go towards it. They never invest the effort to say, hey, can we meet somewhere for dinner? I know it's weeknight. Can we have dinner together next Tuesday? Does that work for you? Kind of thing. But make the investment. Jethro made the investment of energy, okay? If you want to influence people, and this is good for all of you Christian men here who want to influence each other for the Lord. If you want to influence each other, you've got to invest the effort to be around each other. You're not going to show up in my life in 5 minutes and really help me through a crisis and help me if you haven't earned the right for us to connect with each other. And unless you spend time with me, you're not going to earn the right for us to connect. Okay? Number 2, look at verse 7. And Moses went to meet his father-in-law and did obeisance and kissed him, and they asked each other their welfare, and they came into the tent. You know what's happening in verse 7? Verse 7, they both took an article out of the newspaper from Miss Manners. You know Miss Manners? And they read it. Because in verse 7, point number 2, write this down, follow the respectful laws of etiquette. That's what's happening in verse 7. Jethro is following the normal parameters in etiquette, how to treat another adult male. He is treating him like he would another adult. Okay? I'll give you a couple of examples of what I mean by that. one of the things my father used to love to ask me by the time I was 20 and 40 years old, until finally one day I says, Dad, you know what? I've had enough of this. I tried to say it nicely. I'm not sure I did. But he used to ask me, son, when's the last time you had your oil changed in your car? How many of you guys come to church, meet another guy in church, and say, hey, or to you went to the preacher, when's the last time you changed the oil in your car? So I wouldn't do that. It'd be disrespectful. Hello? How do you think your 30-year-old son feels when you say to him, like he's 13? Now, you say, well, you're just so smart, man. Let me tell you something. I can be so dumb sometimes. Our oldest son, Jonathan, he was getting married. This is like under the categories, can you be so dumb and actually be that way? And I can. And so he's getting married, okay? It's the day of the wedding, or the day before the wedding. We go up to Connecticut. He's marrying this wonderful lady. They're a wonderful couple. And so we're talking. And I look at him, and as if I had never heard this message. I had preached this before. But does anybody else know that preaching and practicing can sometimes be a world apart? Just at least for me sometimes. So I said, son, got your honeymoon coming up. How much money you got for your honeymoon? The guy is getting married. And I'm asking him how much money he has for his honeymoon. I mean, can you be so stupid or not? I can. And he looked at me and he said, with a smile, enough. And I felt like an idiot. I didn't mean to be an idiot. I'm just born that way sometimes. And the point is, it was a wrong thing for me to say. It was not respectful. If you want to influence your adult children, then treat them with respect like an adult. And don't treat them like they're 15 and expect them to appreciate it. All right? Number 3, express interest in the details of their lives. In verse 8, and Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done. So Moses starts telling them, and look what in verse 9 what Jethro does. And Jethro said, hey, let me tell you about how I've been feeling at night. I had trouble sleeping. My digestive system hasn't been right. And you know the garden back home, I'm having trouble with the garden, and the riding lawnmower didn't work, and I had trouble at work. And is that what he does? Look at verse 9. And Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness which the Lord had done. What's happening here in verses 8 through 12 is that Jethro is expressing an interest in the details of their lives. We have kids, of course, halfway around the world. They call. And Karen, we have 3 grandchildren, Yechon, Yason, and Halon. They're 7, 6, or 8, 7. Whatever, 7, 6, and 3, something like that. It's all about the same. All right, and you know what I'm saying? They're in that ballpark, okay? So you get on there. Now I can actually understand them, so it's good now. But when they were a couple years ago, it was a big difference between 6 and 4 as far as talking over the phone. But she'll get on the phone, and she'll be talking to Yechon, and then she'll be talking to Yason, and then Halon, and then Rachel, and then Jonathan, and now it's like Tuesday of next week. I mean, she's been on the phone like forever. And I'm amazed. And she had to teach me, and she's still teaching me how to do. You got to work at that. In order to do that, you know what you have to do? You have to ask questions about their life. And you have to ask how they're doing and what the weather is and what they want to do. You've got to ask it about them. You've got to show interest in them. If you want to influence your adult child, quit being so narcissistic, pardon the expression, when they call you and when they come over, and actually decide that you're going to show an interest in what they're interested in. You say, well, I don't care about that stuff. Well, that's fine. You don't have to actually care about it, but you got to act like you care. That's the deal. You don't lie about it. You don't say, oh, man, I'm just so interested in the weather. I mean, let's not lie about the thing, but what's the weather? What did you do in school today? Okay? Did you watch the ball game? Whatever it is, whatever they're into. Okay? You've got to show an interest with enthusiasm. Okay? Number 4. Okay? You've got to ask questions. Look at verse 13. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses sat at judgment. Now in verses 8 through 12, he's been showing all this enthusiasm. Now look at verse 13. It came to pass on the morrow that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood by Moses from morning until evening. Now, that's what's going on here, okay? Now Jethro, now watch this. Remember, so far, what has Jethro done? He's gotten into Moses' presence. He's shown him adult etiquette. He has expressed an interest in the details of his life. He has affirmed what God was doing with enthusiasm. He's acknowledged what God has done in his life. Now, he's going to ask a question. But what's the question based on? The question is a natural outgrowth of all that he's been exposed to. He didn't go there with an agenda. I'm telling you up front, if you want to influence your adult children, you need to get off your high horse like you actually know what they ought to be doing in every area. And accept the fact that God might want to use you to influence them, but you've got to allow God to work the thing. So this question is going to be it's going to naturally, it's an organic question. It comes from the experience. Look at verse 14. And Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did to the people. He said, what is this thing that thou doest to the people? And why sittest thou thyself alone, and all the people stand before thee this morning until evening? Now, what he's doing here is openly asking an open-ended question. Now, I want to give you a tool to help you with this. I brought this up the other day, but I didn't use it. This is called let's try it again. Okay, this is called, at least in North Carolina, this is called good job. Okay, now this is called a rock. Now, I'm going to give you a phrase. If you'll write this phrase down, this, by the way, will help your marriage if you learn to use this rock, not throw it. But if you learn this phrase, Karen and I learned it about 10 or 15 years into our marriage. We've been married almost 38 years. It revolutionized our ability to communicate. Okay? Now, here's the deal. When I say this rock has many different sides to it, okay? Now, when Karen and I are talking about something, and particularly if something that's very emotional, and by the way, you do realize that if you're talking about anything that's important or emotional, you should not be texting or emailing. You are killing yourself and your relationships. If you have an intense issue and you're emailing or you're texting or if you're publicly Facebooking about it, you're just asking to destroy the relationship. Okay? But that's another message. You don't have the time for that one tonight. Okay? All right. But when we say to each other, from this side of the rock, this rock right here on this side is very pointy. On this side, it is flatter and more bent out from one side to the other. Now, when I tell Karen, from my side of the rock, this is what I'm seeing, that's much, much more than saying, well, I think this, or the way I see things is this way. This means much more than this. When I say from my side of the rock, I'm acknowledging 3 things. First of all, I am telling Karen, this is what I am seeing. I'm acknowledging by saying from my side of the rock, there is stuff that she sees that I can't see. Okay? For example, if Karen were to come to me and say, well, Tony, you're not spending enough time with me. Well, I've only got 2 choices. Agree with her or correct her. Right? Okay? But to talk about it becomes problematic. But if she comes to me and says, from my side of the rock, we're not spending enough time together, here's what she's telling me. From her perspective, from her view, she doesn't see us having enough time together. But she's acknowledging that I see things that she doesn't see. Now watch this. But when I say from my side of the rock, not only am I saying that you see things that I don't see, but the bottom of this rock is flat, not like either side. So when I say to her from my side of the rock, I am saying I see things you don't see, you see things I don't see, and there are still things about this issue that neither one of us see. So when I'm asking questions, I will build into that sometimes the phrase from my side of the rock. From my side of the rock, this is what I'm seeing. But the person you're talking to has to understand the rock is already going to be introduced into the relationship. So everybody in my family knows about the rock. Everybody in our church knows about the rock. Our members in our church use the rock often. Okay, I have this in my office. I use this for counseling. Again, not to throw at people, but to tell them to start using it in their communication with each other. But he's asking an open-ended question. He's not judging the question, just asking a question. All right? If you want to influence your adult children, then ask open-ended questions. Number 5, this is going to be hard for some of you. Listen to the answer. Listen to the answer. Look at verse 15. And Moses said unto his father-in-law, because the people come to me to inquire of God, where they have a matter, they come unto me, and I judge between one another, and do make them know the statutes of God and His law. Now watch this. When you listen to an answer, there are 3 ways you must listen. Please write this down. First of all, you must listen physically. You must listen physically. If you're in their presence, you got to look at them. You got to quit doing stuff and listen to them. You listen physically. Second, you listen intellectually. Intellectually means that you're actually following the words. Have you ever been in a conversation with your wife, guys, and in this conversation she's talking, and all of a sudden you realize you don't have the foggiest idea what she's talking about? Anybody have that happen to them? I've had it happen to me. She's talking, and all of a sudden I catch that, there's a conversation going on here, and I didn't realize it, and I'm the recipient of this conversation, and I don't know what she's talking about. Now, what I used to do was just fake it until I could make it. I could figure it out. But what we agreed was that really wasn't being honest. So now what we do, if one of us starts a conversation, the other one has been sleeping or whatever, they're really following it, finally wakes up internally, the internal clock wakes up, oh yeah, hey, listen, you know what? I really want to be engaged to what you're saying, and I missed the first part. Can you go back to the beginning? Can we start this all over again? And she's never offended by that. I'm not offended that she does it to me, because we want to listen to each other. Okay? So you have to listen physically, you got to listen intellectually. Now watch this. You have to listen patiently. Now this is what I mean by that, by listening patiently. How many times do your adult children respond to your question, and as they're answering you, you're already formulating your next move? Like a chess player that's 2 steps ahead. You're not listening. The value of listening patiently is it helps you keep your mouth shut longer before you open it up again. And the Bible says that even a foolish person looks smart if they keep their mouth shut. Okay? And so you just got to be careful that you don't just run off at the mouth too much, too quickly. So you have to listen to the answer. That's what Jethro did. All right? And number 6. Okay? You've got to then, number 6, express your burden. Look at express your burden. Verse 17, Moses' father-in-law said unto him, the thing that thou doest is not good. Now, understand, he's not going to Moses and saying, hey, Moses, I got a better idea. You've been cutting your grass this way, but you know what? If you cut it at this angle here, this is much better. If there's not a problem with the grass, then just keep your mouth shut. You don't have to give your opinion about everything. If there's not a reason to make a suggestion, maybe you ought to just accept the fact of how your son or daughter, or may I say this, your son-in-law and daughter-in-law is doing it. Just say, that's fine. Not the way you would do it, but you know what? It's not your house. It's not your stuff. Okay? But here, he is watch this, he is expressing his burden. Now watch this, verse 18. Thou wilt surely wear away both thou and this people. This thing is too heavy for thee. He is sharing his burden for Moses. You know the old adage, the phraseology, people don't care how much you know. Do they know how much you what? You care. Now watch this. Do you think that Moses would be open to this burden being shared in verses 17 and 18 if the first 16 verses of chapter 18 had not occurred? You see, when somebody calls me on the phone, says, hey, Is this the pastor of Stillwater Baptist Church? Yep. He says, I've got the thing your church needs. And do you think that person really cares about what my church needs? Has the foggiest idea of my church? He doesn't know what I don't know him. He's a salesman or a sales lady or whatever. He don't know what I need. You know what? I'm not too open to the suggestion. You know why? Because I really don't think they care about me. You know what? They don't. It's a business deal. But if you want to influence your adult child, they need to know that you care about them. You want the best thing for them. Okay? That you believe in them. And by the way, let me just tell you this, okay? This is a sidebar. If you want to revolutionize your son or daughter or son-in-law and daughter-in-law's life, then get in the habit of affirming them and get in the habit of saying how proud of you are of them, and get in the habit of saying things that match Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26, I think it is, where it says that our word should minister grace to the hearers. All right? Look at verse 19. Number 7. Do not try to take over. Number 7. Do not try to take over. Look at verse 19. Hearken now unto my voice, I will give thee, what's the next word? Counsel. And God shall be with thee. He's not trying to take over. He is giving advice. And it's up to God to work in Moses' life. You've got to understand, and I want to give a side note to you who have adult daughters who are married. You be very careful. In fact, so careful that you never go to your daughter to confront your son-in-law. You are putting her in an impossible position. She left you to cling to her husband. He said, well, we don't get along, and I got to help her because her husband's is a dud. You know what? It's her dud. It may be her milk dud, but it's her dud, okay? And you're not helping matters by telling your daughter how stupid her husband is and always correcting him in front of her. In fact, you're violating Scripture. You are violating the Word of God because you're going against God's plan for that marriage. If you got a problem with that son-in-law of yours, you suck it up and talk to him man to man. But don't go to the daughter. It's not the right thing to do. That was free, by the way. Okay? All right. But he's not trying to take over. So Jethro's not trying to take over. He's giving counsel. Okay? Now listen, counsel by nature must be wanted or welcomed, or it can never truly be given. It must be wanted or welcomed, or it can never truly be given. It's counsel. Now, when they're 7, if they don't obey, what do? You make them wish they had obeyed. You make them want to obey. You put enough pressure in their life at 7 years old to make them want to obey. When they're 37, ain't that way. Okay? Number 8, explain your suggestion. Explain your suggestion. Now watch what happens in verse 19. He says to them, be thou for this people Godward, verse 19, that thou mayest bring the cause to God. And verses 20 down to verse 22, he explains this system of delegating responsibility. We all understand that. Any of us in management understand this. He's saying, develop this system so the problems can be dealt with more efficiently and you don't have to solve every single problem. Okay? So he explains his suggestion. Okay? That's important. Okay? You explain it. Okay? Now, number 9. Okay? Once you explain it, then you point to God for direction. Very important. This is where so many people get messed up here when it comes to giving suggestions or influence to their adult child. You point to God for direction. Look at verse 23. This is a beautiful verse. If thou shalt do this thing, and God command thee. See what Jethro is doing? He's putting this suggestion between Moses and God where it belongs. Moses is not responsible to his father-in-law. He's responsible to God. When I give people advice, When I give people advice, I use a phrase. This is a great phrase. You need to learn to use this phrase. If this works for you, if you feel that God wants you to do this, or if this works for you, this is an idea you can use if this works for you. All right? But at the end of the day, once I've given my advice, I need to back off and say, now, Lord, this is between you and the Lord. Okay? This is between you and God. Okay? Now, let me just say this. When I practice point number 9, here's what I do, and I want to encourage every parent of an adult child to learn to do this. Once you've given advice and you pull back, can I challenge you to make this statement to your son and daughter? I am confident you're going to make the right choice. I try to always say that. I am confident you are going to make the right choice. You say, preacher, you don't know my son. If you knew my 35-year-old son, you would not say that about him. I would if I loved him. What do you mean? Look at 1 Corinthians 13. Love believeth all things, hopeth all things. Love always thinks the best of people. So when I give advice to another man, just as a pastor, I'm giving advice to another adult, to an adult, or I am a father giving advice to a grown son or a daughter-in-law, I'm always saying to them, you know, I'm confident you're going to make the right choice. I need to hear that from you. The 20-something, 30-something, 40-something, even 50-something-year-old who has their parents still alive, there is a benefit of the affirmation of love, particularly man to man, for that man, father, to say to that man, son, I'm confident you're going to make the right choice. That's powerful. That's encouraging. That's saying I love you more than the new table saw from Home Depot. I mean, that's pretty cool. Okay? That's so valuable. And then number 10, okay? Take your hands off of it and keep your mouth shut. You say, that's not very nice, but just write it down. Take your hands off of it and keep your mouth shut. And Moses hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he said. And his father-in-law departs in verse 27. He's done with it, okay? But once you've given your advice, and just take your hands off and just keep your mouth shut. And don't try to force the issue. It's between them and God. Now, these principles can apply on a horizontal level to adult in many different ways, but it especially applies to parents of adult children. Now, here's the deal. I mentioned that my father's already gone, and my mom's gone. I used to be the kid growing up as a younger adult, okay? I couldn't, like, swing a hammer. I didn't know how to do anything around the house. And we bought our house in 99 when we moved to the beach. And it used to be a 1,500 square foot house. It's now a 3,000 square foot house. So I've doubled the size of the house. It's basically that apartment that we built for ministry. It's about 1,000 square feet down there. And some other stuff I had to do because of that. And for the most part, we've done the work ourselves. I mean, tiling, building, and a lot of the buildings from buildings that had been destroyed off the beach during hurricanes. We took the wood from that and reused it. So not shabby for somebody who don't know how to do anything. Okay? But I can tell you now, okay, I would really like to hear my dad's appraisal of it. I never will be able to. He's been dead for 10 years. If you're alive and you have an adult child, of course you're alive, you're here, but if you have an adult child, okay, if you have an adult child, let me tell you something. Your affirmation and influencing them like you ought to is a gift only you can give them. Take your hymn book. We're going to end with one verse. I'm going to end, Pastor can do what he wants, but I'm going to end with the one verse, number 100 in your green book. And it's 8 o'clock, so it's time to stop. I could keep going. You say, now we know that, preacher.